and move with Phil Harrington on leasing and the cost of ownership. Thanks very much.
Just bring up the presentation. Yeah, my name's Phil Harrington. These days I run my own consulting business called Strategy.Policy.Research, and working really at electric vehicle and low emission vehicle economics in a fleet context. That's really what it's about. This presentation draws on some work that I did indeed with Jack Gildy, who's in the audience, for a major national client. I can't talk about who that client is because the work's confidential. But you'd probably guess if I say they're the largest purchaser and seller of vehicles in Australia, which is important because we've got access to that data and also to some confidential data from the Federal Chamber of Automotive Industries on sales of vehicles, by model, by buyer type, which is also confidential, in order to do the analysis. So in short, I'm quite confident in the accuracy of this work. And then really, why did we do the work? The client was interested in knowing really two things. Is there a case for incentivising the uptake of either low emission vehicles? That was the first question. And then the question was, if there is, well, how low would the emissions need to be, for that to be a sensible case? So in other words, what is a low emission vehicle? I guess our key points here, I don't know if that's readable from the back. The first thing we did was look at so-called low emission vehicles. And we were encouraged to use the definition that the ACT uses for that, an ACT question, which is 130 grams of CO2 equivalent per kilometre, as measured by the Green Vehicle Guide. And so we did our analysis there first, model by model, class by class, at fleet relevant classes. So the BMW i8 out there, as nice as it is hardly a fleet vehicle. So we didn't get into our analysis, nor the Tesla, I'm sorry. And look, just quickly on there, what we found was that fleet managers are not making rational choices when it comes to minimising the total cost of ownership. I think they called it, or what I call the whole of lease cost. They can save a lot of money just by making better vehicle choices, full stop, but certainly within that low emission vehicle range. We run into some other issues which I'll talk about, and as advice to the client that would really not be a very sensible thing to encourage, to incentivise. You just don't need to incentivise the uptake of more fuel efficient vehicles, they pay for themselves. So we then looked at another case which is electric vehicles, which included plug-in hybrids. So effectively our definition there was 50 grams of CO2 equivalent per kilometre or less. And basically we showed that it is indeed cost effective from a societal point of view, social benefit cost analysis, to encourage the take up of those vehicles. And that's true today at today's pricing. But within that we then looked at different options and found that cashback kind of subsidies, which is what people think of as an incentive, are really the worst option. That's the dumbest thing you could do. But possibly cost effective in a couple of situations, but generally not. So if I just unpack that a little bit more, I'll go quickly through the methodology, not some people interested in that. I mentioned that we've got some very high quality sales data from the FCAI using the ACT work. We looked at a whole of lease cost for a whole lot of different vehicles, including the sales leader in every class, the biggest selling model in every fleet relevant class, and then we looked at a sales weighted average of all the vehicles in that class. We looked at how likely is it if various forms of subsidy were provided that there would be additional sales, using a technique called price elasticity, which I can talk about, and utilising some research came out of California with sales of low emission and electric vehicles. We looked at what would the benefits of that be, both private benefits to the lease holder and indeed for the life of the vehicle. So we looked at the second-hand market, average life of vehicles, as we know, is very long, well beyond their life in a fleet context. And then external benefits like avoided air pollution and greenhouse gas emissions. And we also looked at, by the way, the change in the air pollutants caused by additional demand for electric vehicles. So it was quite a detailed study in that sense. We're going to see that I'm not being just offered as a similar kind of chart. Just the details for those who are interested in this kind of stuff. What's the whole of life cost, basically, of a vehicle? So it's the net capital cost, and the important bit being net, what do you have to pay for it, as compared to the buy price minus the sell price, obviously. So the key thing there that informed this analysis is that while obviously we're paying more at the moment for some low emission vehicles and for electric plug-in hybrid electric vehicles, not hybrid, their retail value is also much higher, certainly according to this client who buys and sells more often than anyone else in Australia. And so the amount that has to be financed is not necessarily higher than for conventional vehicles. In some cases it's lower. And then operational costs obviously include fuel or electricity, maintenance, third party, etc., things that aren't avoidable. And as was mentioned, the residual value is obviously very important to the overall amount of capital that has to be financed. In terms of then policy options, what do we look at? Capital subsidies or rebates, which is the first thing people think of. For modelling purposes, we looked at a couple of ranges, $2,500 per vehicle up to $5,000 per vehicle for battery electric vehicles, and $1,000 to $2,500 for the ordinary low emission vehicle, which is the less than 130 grams per kilometre. Again, a detail for those who are interested, own price elasticity minus 2.4, that just means that for every 1% reduction in the price, you would expect to get a 2.4% increase in the demand for that vehicle. The other models we looked at, bulk purchasing. Many of the stakeholders that we spoke to basically said, we don't want a capital rebate, we want somebody to stand in the market and buy a lot of vehicles. Why? Because that will bring more vehicles, it will give confidence to the market and also realise some bulk purchase discounts. And the third option was a bit of a hybrid between those two. Basically, we said to this client, for those of you who know what the ACT has done on renewable power, they've basically done a reverse auction. They said, we want this much renewable power, who can provide that to us at the cheapest price? So that's effectively what we advised this client to do. We've got so much money, we want to incentivise the uptake of electric vehicles. You, the industry out there, charge, network providers, vehicle providers, fleets, you come to us with your best offer, you know? And effectively what you're doing is getting the maximum leverage for each dollar of investment. And as we'll see when I get to the results, the kind of cashback kind of model gets very little leverage as compared to that kind of model. So what were the key results? Firstly, looking at the low emission vehicles in fleets. So these are the kind of the conventional low emission vehicles, if you want to think. So much so that some key results. The sales leader in the micro class happened to be the Fiat 500. That's a low emission vehicle on that class, right? So if you think about subsidising low emission vehicles, you'd be subsidising the sales leader in that class. Does that make any sense? Not a great deal. What else did we find? In the large slash SUV under $70,000 class, these are all SCAI classes. The Prius V, you know, the conventional hybrid, that's also a low emission vehicle, and its whole of life cost, or whole lease cost, is already $11,000 less than the sales weighted average in that class. So simply by switching to that vehicle within the one class, the fleet manager could save $11,000. Why they don't do it is kind of personal preference, I guess. When we looked at all of the classes, the worst we could find is that the whole of lease costs for low emissions vehicles at worst were 10% higher than the sales weighted average for that class, and often a lot less. So in short, we said, look, most conventional LEVs are highly cost effective already. They don't need subsidies. If you do provide a subsidy, we get this problem called free riding. We've kind of heard of that. So the problem is that if you would have sold 5,000 Fiat 500s next year anyway, and you turn around and you provide a subsidy in order to try and sell some more, you've got to provide the 5,000 people who would have bought it anyway with a subsidy. And they go, thank you very much. You know, and you might get an extra few percentage points on top. It's exactly the same. A lot of research in California, where, as you know, they provide very extensive subsidies there. They've worked out that free riding is very high, and therefore the cost to government of every additional vehicle that they would not otherwise have been sold is very, very high, many times higher than the cost of the low emission vehicle. And also, we then end up scratching our head and saying, so why would we do that anyway when what we're talking about are petrol or diesel burners? You know, when, as we would all know, many cities around the world are phasing out petrol and diesel burners. So we then essentially moved on to another methodology, which was to look at the case for battery electric vehicles and plug-in hybrid electric vehicles. So things like the BMW i3, the Outlander, both of which are out there. We did look at the Volt and the IMEV and the Leaf, even though none of those were on sale at the time, because otherwise we got very little to look at. Just so that we could populate the model with some numbers, really. We understand there's some concern and some experience, I think, from Belgium that where the Outlander has been used in fleets without educating the drivers, and they end up just running around using petrol and not being recharged ever. So that would obviously require some management. And with respect to that free riding issue, the numbers of sales of these models in Australia at the moment are obviously low. So the free riding risk is lower too, but still not zero. We did assume, by the way, as Bede looked at this, that green power is used for all so you're running out of time? I'm running out of time. Yep.
I'm happy with extra minutes and more content at the moment.
I'll move quickly on.
Good stuff, but
yeah, I'll move quickly on.
Look,
I won't dwell on now. I'll take projections. That's Norway there in pink, as everyone knows. And actually, interestingly enough, the high ones here are actually Australian Energy Markets operator, and they wildly exceed what's actually occurred to date. So obviously everyone knows that the take-up has been very, very low. So I'll just quickly get to the results. Here they are. We've got a number of scenarios here. Where the scenario 3 really was to lead to a significant uptake of new models coming into the country, so actually new entries of new vehicles, and achieving about a 3% of new sales by 2020 would be electric or plug-in hybrid. That's what that means. And if we did that, then we're looking at, in this particular place, a net economic benefit of about $48 million. And that's with kind of today's pricing. Bulk purchasing, as you can see, is kind of appears at number 3 and 4, depending on the scenario there. It's actually worth pointing out that scenario 3 is with green power. So it's always more cost effective to use green power than to not use green power, as was touched on before. So the additional cost of green power is more than offset by the additional value of avoided air pollution and avoided greenhouse gas emissions. And you can see that pretty much the capital subsidies are down at the bottom, particularly in scenarios where free riding is high. You can even get some negative economic outcomes, as you can see there. And we just think that that's a pretty poor model, basically. So you've seen this slide before. What do we conclude? Just to draw it together, we just don't need to subsidise conventional low-emission vehicles. They're cost-effective already. It's surprising, perhaps, to find that it is already cost-effective from a societal point of view to be subsidising battery electric vehicles and plug-in hybrid electric vehicles. But if you're going to do that, be smart about how you do it, and capital subsidies, we would suggest, would be the silliest thing to do. But strategies that are more leveraged and they get more engagement and from the EV community are going to get better economic results. So that's it.
Thanks very much, Phil. This is obviously a subject that could do